All right. What is going on, everybody? Day late this week. Day late and not a dollar short because we have an amazing guest this week, Mr. Marko from The Crown. How's it going, man?
Hey man, all good.
Hell
All
yeah.
good.
So, very stoked to have you on, man. I know you guys have a new album coming out here pretty soon, and you just released a new video. But before we get into all that, wanted to talk to you a little bit about the history of the band. So the Crown has been around, from 1990. You guys had like a huge 14-year run, took a little break, reformed in like 2009, and you've been there since like the very beginning of it all. So that's super cool. It's rare these days, especially that you have a band that has been around for the better part of 3 decades. What have you learned in that time to keep a band going that long?
Oh, quite a lot. I mean, as you say, 3 decades. We started when we were 14 years old, and I used to say that my only goal was to get a demo tape done because I had like my favorite fan sign, a Swedish fan sign. I really wanted to get a review there. That was my only goal with the band, and it just grew from there. We did the second demo, and you know, got picked up by a Swedish label and did 2 albums, and then after that, picked up by Metal Blade. And I mean, a lot of things have happened, a lot of mistakes, a lot of good stuff. I mean, you learn a lot, of course, and but I think. Maybe the biggest or best lesson for us was actually when we quit, like in 2003, because as I said, we started when we were 14, and it was all about the band. I mean, we had like discussions in the band. Don't get a proper job because you must be ready to, commit to all tours and all, live shows. And but when we actually quit, because it wasn't a break, it became a break afterwards
Right.
when we come back. But we actually quit the band, and we were in a situation where we had to start thinking about adult stuff, taking care of ourselves and starting to pay the bills and stuff like that. So we had like this break for like what is it, like 6 years, and some of us went to school, and some of us got proper jobs, and most of us got families and got kids and all of that sort of normal stuff. So when we sort of decided to do a comeback or whatever, that's when we really learned a lot, that how we need to balance everything. That I mean, we love the band stuff, but obviously we love to have families as well and have like a normal life. So that is the sort of challenge. And thanks to the break, we have a bit of perspective of things. So it's not all about accepting all kind of crazy offers, be away 10 weeks and you get home and you're divorced, you need to sort of start to think about the sort of reality side to things.
Right.
So we sort of, obviously, since we decided to sort of do music again, I mean, we all realized that this is something we want to have in our life. It means something to us. So it's all about finding that balance now. So do the crazy stuff and still be a normal fucking human being.
And I think that's really sound advice, man, because it's like a lot of bands are just like so it's become the norm to just like eat shit forever. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like and finding that balance and finding, the ability to not just be like, oh, like we have to take every single offer because, if we don't, someone else will, and all this kind of stuff. Like, really, knowing what's best for all of you as people as well as all of you as artists. Like there is a balance for sure. And
And
I
it's
think
very difficult when you're in the middle of it, when you are on that 13th year of doing stuff. I mean, that's like, everything is here. It's like, yeah, if you get an offer, we need to do it. It's like you said, you like, oh, well, someone else will fucking take it, and
yeah.
then fuck, then. So I mean, I think the timing, sort of when we quit, we were sort of adults, you know. So it forced us to sort of think maybe in a better way. So
Yeah.
to find the balance, you know.
Well, that's a good way to do it, man. I think that it's important for every band, you know, especially bands that are at the touring level where you're releasing records on, you know, through a label and, you know, doing all that stuff. You have this great support system, but it's like those systems can only work to your advantage if you're not actively working against yourself. You know what I mean? And I feel like a lot of bands, just for the sake of like, you know, this weird need to like get out there and do it and jump on everything, and like it makes you feel like you're being proactive, but oftentimes stuff like that can hurt you in the long run. So knowing what to take and what to not, that's a good thing to learn in 30 years of being a band.
A difficult thing, but absolutely,
Yeah.
it's very important.
So just last week we had Trevor from Unearth on here, and he, you know, we talked to him kind of about, you know, the late 90s early 2000s like metalcore, and you know how influential Swedish death metal was on that scene in America. And you were around for that Swedish death metal scene in the 90s. So, you know, when you were in the middle of all that, did it like seem like a special thing while it was happening? Or, you know, I mean, obviously in retrospect, it's like, yeah, there was so much that came out of it. But, like, do you have any insight particularly as to why or how, like, so much good metal of really all types comes out of, like, the Scandinavian peninsula and especially Sweden in particular?
Yeah, it was an interesting period, but I don't think that when we were in the middle of it, I mean, the only thing that we sort of realized is that shit, there's some really good albums coming up, and we almost knew right away, like dissection albums, yeah, they're gonna be classics, you know, they're so obvious. But there's a funny thing about that sort of what later became that sort of metalcore thing in the US. I mean, it was so inspired and triggered by At the Gates, by the whole Slaughter of the Soul album.
Mm-hmm.
But the funny thing that many don't realize, that when actually Slaughter of the Soul was released, it wasn't an instant success.
Right.
So because I told this before, but we actually played with At the Gates when they had this sort of release party in their hometown Gothenburg when when they released Slaughter of the Soul. And it wasn't a big thing. It was like 100 people, you know.
Yeah.
And we all felt that, yeah, this is a good album, but it wasn't this sort of explosion that happened like after they quit. And there were some people in the US that started to sort of mimic that thing. And that's when it sort of became super huge. And obviously a lot of people, when they heard the sort of American bands, they of course started to dig into the past, you know, where does this come from? But and obviously Slaughter of the Soul album deserves so much cred, obviously, but it's just interesting that it wasn't an instant success.
Right.
So thanks to a lot of the metalcore stuff, it became the classic that it deserves to be today, you know.
So it was kind of like reverse engineering a little bit, right?
Yeah,
Where it was like,
in a way it was,
yeah.
because I remember when the metalcore bands started to come, and like people were like freaking out when you read from people from the US. This is so amazing. We're like, well, we heard this 5 years ago. It's like nothing new. So you sort of hear the At the Gates riffs all over the place, you know. So, but then again, there was, you know, all the In Flames, and you know, there was so many bands, you know, doing very, very good albums. And yeah, we were in the middle of it. We were never we weren't part of the Gothenburg metal scene, and we weren't part of the Stockholm scene. We were somewhere in between, because we always liked our sort of American death metal style as well. We always enjoyed, you know, the good old Florida death metal things, and everything that was released on Eric Records and recorded at Morrison Studios. You know, that was a lot, like 50% of our backbone. But then I've always been a sucker for the Swedish melodic bands like Edge of Sanity, and you know, a lot of those bands. So but it was interesting times. I mean, especially the dissection thing. I remember we played with them. I think it was like a week before they released Summerlane, and you could like feel it. Like, this is gonna be something really extra, you know.
Yeah, yeah. That's it's super cool that you mentioned that you kind of got that you guys kind of like have this in between kind of sound because I've always been like, it's I've not to say that I've never viewed you guys as like a Swedish death metal band because obviously you have some of the trademarks there, but I'm like you guys have a little bit more like teeth than a lot of other Swedish death metal bands. Like it's just it hits a little bit harder, and that's something that I've kind of always noticed. So it's cool to hear that from the man himself. Like yeah, we're super influenced by like American Florida death metal type of stuff
Yeah.
because you can really hear it in the style. And speaking of, you guys you're releasing a new album pretty soon here, right? Couple weeks, and you just released a single yesterday, but before that you released a song called Motor Death, which is sick. It hits that heavy, fast aggressiveness, exactly what I would be expecting from a new Crown single. So um, that's awesome to hear. But your latest single, which I think you guys just released a video for yesterday, right? We Drift On. It's a little bit more like chilled out, slower tempo kind of stuff. Uh, has like kind of like anthemic feels almost. Uh, how did that song come about? Like how did you did you like make a conscious shift in your writing, or were you just kind of like let's write a more chilled out kind of song?
Yeah, I'm to blame for it. uh, it goes a bit against our sort of typical what we do, but then again, I think that if people have followed us, they know that on every album we are doing something a bit out of the box, a couple of songs at least. We're trying to push it, but we will always be a death metal band. But I think that what inspires us a bit is that we have a bit of that old, actually Metallica approach
Mm-hmm.
since the
Yeah,
shirt.
right there.
I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, they're fucking fearless and they do whatever they want. And in a sense, that's something we try to do as well. And sometimes you come up with something like We Drift On, and it is a bit different. And I remember when I wrote the song, I sent it to the guys. It was actually even more mellow, the original demo version. It was really, really mellow. But I felt that this is good stuff. And I don't care that it's not fucking blast beats all over the time. It's very mellow, and let's come up with some cool vocals to it, and let's build something a bit special. And later on, I know that I was pushing for that. Let's fucking do a video of it. Let's surprise people. They're expecting always 200 BPM and full-on death metal, and let's surprise a bit, because it's a bit difficult to surprise today with a death metal song. I mean, how brutal can you get, so it felt a bit interesting to let's give the second song a fucking heart attack to people, and let's see what the death metal police will say, when they hear it. So it's interesting to sort of challenge people and challenge us as well, and yeah, it's a cool song. It's a different song, but I think that we sort of crownified it in the end. So
Yeah, absolutely. I personally love it, man. I love the like the shift. You know what I mean? I think that a lot of people, especially metal listeners, because it's like you have so many different kinds. People who've been listening to metal since like the 80s, when all there was just like shredding guitar and clean singing, and then death metal came around, and you have this much more aggressive style, and there's so many different people from all different walks. And I feel like a lot of people have kind of been like, well, death metal is just kind of like a, how fast can you play, and there's no rhyme or reason to it, and all this kind of stuff. And I like when bands come around and kind of turn that stereotype on its head and are like, actually, we're musicians. Like, we're super sick musicians. And I think that your newest song is definitely a showcase of that, is that it's like, yeah, like we're death metal guys, to the core, but like there's more there, and it's good in my opinion to showcase that, because it shows, musical growth and after 30 years, right, you'd expect a little bit of that. So
I, I think so too. I mean, I think also after 30 years, you're a bit confident in what you do. You're not
mhm.
so scared, to be judged. And I
Yeah,
mean, what the hell can you do? I mean, we write music and we release music, and that's what we do. And I think it's very important also that you write music to sort of capture the time, you know, where you are.
hmm,
And there is a certain point of time when you're very much inspired by like dirty rock and roll stuff. Yeah, that's when we do an album like Hell Is Here. That's very obvious that we were influenced by the very punky stuff. But it's also cool because now, when you look back at albums, it becomes like a timestamp of, when I listen to like very, very early stuff, I remember that was the times we were so inspired by melodic black metal. And I mean, there's no reason to be ashamed of it. I mean, everybody gets inspired and influenced by stuff. But after 30 years, I'm not afraid to try out different stuff.
yeah,
So I mean, but I always been sort of course, obviously, I love my death metal, but I remember from like early 90s, from Entombed's debut album, the opening track, Left Hand Path. I mean, it was a fucking good song, but when they hit that final part with the keyboards, that was like, wow, that
hmm,
sort of thing has always sort of inspired me when I think a bit outside the box. So,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's like when you hear those outside influences in death metal songs, like I said, it just kind of showcases like what these musicians have to bring to the table and like what inspires them. I feel like if you, especially as a creator of metal and even like the heavier kinds of metal, if you only listen to that one type of metal or that one type of music, that's just what your music is going to sound like. So it's cool to hear those outside influences kind of like show their face here and there, as these like super heavy crushing albums, you know, uh,
I think it's good.
unfold.
And it's also, in the end, it's more challenging to do because it would
Yeah.
be much more easier if we would follow some sort of recipe. Let's make 10 songs, ultra fucking death metal songs, blast beats all over the way. We could do it, but it wouldn't be very, inspiring or very special in a way. So,
Yeah.
so it's more challenging to, when you're working on an album, okay, I did the thrash song, I did the heavy song, now I need to do something else.
Hmm.
We truly, I mean, we at least try to approach every song that let's base it on something that we haven't done before. If it is a beat or a whatever, as a sort of triplet riff, or I mean something that is a bit unique. So that's what's definitely more interesting to do. So who knows, maybe I will write a fucking piano ballad or something in the future. But
Hell yeah. I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for it.
yeah.
So, real quick, we have a couple of questions from some of the people that are viewing. George Burden wants to know, where did you get that incredible Death Race King guitar design?
Ah, that's pretty interesting. I was actually approached by a guy from Canada. I didn't know him, and oh shit, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name right now. It was years ago, but he just approached me and said that, yeah, I'm into like woodwork, and he sent me a lot of pictures, and he did amazing like wood carving work, and he said, oh, it would be really cool to do it on a guitar. I was like, yeah, that would be fucking amazing. So we sort of decided. I bought a Mockingbird guitar on eBay and shipped it to him, and he worked on it for like, I don't know, 6 months. It was like a very long thing, and he had this idea to carve the Death Race theme on it. And actually, I'm looking at it right now. It's pretty nice. So it carved on it and sent it back to me, and I had a lot of oil work on it. And yeah, that's my main guitar. It's wonderful. It's one of a kind.
That's so
It's my
sick,
Death
man.
Race bird.
So, Jeffrey Miles wants to know. This is always a tough question. This is always a horrible question in my opinion, because it's impossible to give an answer to. But maybe not. Maybe not. We'll see. So, Jeffrey Miles wants to know, what album is your personal favorite?
From the Crown.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the Death Race King
Yeah.
because we came from so many different areas, and especially we started doing all kind of weird stuff on Hellitir. But I think the sort of essence of what we want to do, we nailed it on Death Race King.
Right.
From there on, we tried to push it forward and try to find out other ways. But I think the whole Death Race King experience was, for us, pretty magical.
Oh yeah. Yeah, see, you answered that way easier than I ever have. Every time someone's like, "What's your favorite album that you've been a part of?" I'm just like, "Bro, they're like my children. There's things I love and
I know,
hate about
I
all
know.
of them." Like, okay, and then one more. Sebastian Thel wants to know: was it a setback when you had to change the band name?
At the time, yes, we
Yeah.
were so fucking pissed off at that band. I remember it was an American band, and they were about to come to Gothenburg and play. And I remember Magnus was like telling us, "We need to go there, slice up their tires," and that was so funny. We were so pissed. I remember I had my birthday around that time, and Magnus gave me a birthday gift. It was their fucking Crown of Thorns album, and a lighter and some, what's it called, lighter with fluid.
Yeah.
To actually like set that fucking album on fire.
Yeah. That's amazing. So wait,
Yeah,
so I this is actually the first I've ever heard of this. I didn't know that you guys had to change your band name. What were you called before?
we were called Crown of Thorns,
Okay. And there was
and
already another. Were they
yeah, we
also a
were.
death metal band?
No. That was the sad thing because we released 2 albums under the name Crown of Thorns, and somewhere when we got, yeah, it was right after we released the second album called Eternal Death. Our Swedish label got a fax from the US from this band called Crown of Thorns that was sort of sponsored by Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, and it was this really disgusting AOR rock music,
Right.
and it was really disgusting and terrible music, but they sort of claimed that they're gonna sue us if we're gonna continue because they had decided that this
Yeah.
American Thorns is gonna be the new big thing or whatever. So
Well, here you guys are 30 years later, and I have no fucking idea who that other band is. So.
yeah, so we took the decision, what the hell we're gonna do, and we just shortened the name, kept the first part of the logo, and just went forward. And luckily, when we had to change the name, we were picked up by Metal Blade, so it was easy to get out the word
Right.
that.
Right.
So I know that, especially when I meet people from the US, they always think that our debut album is Hell Is Here, but we did 2 albums before that under the name Crown of Thorns.
That's interesting trivia right there. I never knew that. Never knew that. I always thought Hell's Here was the debut album. So
Yeah.
I my band had a similar experience long before I was in the band. They used to be called Allegiance, and then and then they got 2 different cease and desist orders, very similar to like what you guys got. From 2 different bands called Allegiance, and they were just like, all right, well, let's change it. Let's keep the first part, the ALLEG part, and then after that, let's just put too many vowels so that no one will ever hit us up for copyright ever again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in your personal life. Obviously everybody kind of wants to know, how all these musicians are dealing with this past year. Looking at your Instagram, it is pretty obvious that you have been taking a bigger part in your own like health and fitness. What was the trigger for that? Was it something that you just kind of decided on, when this whole pandemic hit and everybody got stuck indoors, or was it something that you had been working on kind of before all that just kind of really came to light once you had more time to spend on social media?
Yes. That actually started about 5-6 years ago. I've always been sort of a heavy dude, and basically struggled with that all my life, going up and down, like we all do.
Yeah.
But it was 5-6 years ago. There was this pretty critical thing that happened. It was I was out with my son playing, soccer, just, for fun. And I just found myself so out of breath and just realizing how fucking bad shape I was.
Yeah.
I had to seriously make excuses to the kids, oh, daddy I need to go and check my emails, or something like that, because I was so in terrible shape. So I just decided, again, I've done a lot of attempts before, but at that time I really said that now we need a change. And I've tried multiple times. Now I'm going to do everything differently, because of course, if you do the same thing again, you will get the same results again.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided I need to do everything differently. So instead of sort of getting that March, April panic that, oh, now I need to get in shape, the summer is coming, like we all do.
Yeah.
So I did everything the opposite. I started like in August, September, okay, now I need to do something. Let's fucking go out, run, and, think about what I eat and stuff like that. So I took a very huge step and lost like 60 pounds and yeah, starting to think about the bigger picture. I want to be around here when I have grandkids, and start to think a bit ahead.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud that still 6 years afterwards, I'm still in that mindset. Trying to go out, run, and hit the gym, and try to take care of myself.
Yeah. Hell yeah, man. That's awesome. I know I have always been kind of in the opposite boat, where it's like growing up I was like a twig. I was just like super super skinny, and because of that I never had to worry about anything, right? I was like, I'm just a super skinny guy. And then I hit 30 a couple years ago, and everything changed. And so now I'm kind of like trying to figure out, what I can do to avoid getting in worse shape, you know what I mean? Like as time goes on, not letting myself go, and trying to find that discipline. So it's always cool to hear how other people have kind of been like, no, this is like how I did it, and what it is. And what people always tell me, you know what I mean, is that it's like there's no such thing as like a diet or like a quick exercise plan that's just gonna like fix it. It's like it has to be a lifestyle change.
Yeah.
Like you have to change everything about what you're doing, and
Yeah.
exert a little bit of discipline. And it's hard at first, but like eventually it just becomes second nature. So that's super cool to hear from a
So
person who's
true.
gone through it.
I've so been there, done those 10-week, things, but as you said, it's not the solution. The
Yeah.
solution is lifestyle change.
Yeah.
And you think when it has an end point, something you're trying to do, it's gonna fail.
Yeah.
So you need to think that, okay, this is the way I'm gonna live the rest of my life. It doesn't mean it needs to be boring or whatever. You just need to find a balance, and make sure take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so far so good.
Oh yeah, yeah. One of our one of our previous guests, Mr. Trevor Stranad from the Black Dahlia murder, he said something that like really stuck with me when we were talking about their career. And he was like, you know what, dude, like success doesn't have a finish line. Like there's no such. It's like if you put an end point on something that you want to achieve, you'll never get there, because that's just not how it works. And that's something that really resonated. So it sounds like it's a universal kind of thing, is that there's no finish line on success. You just got to do it because you want to do it. So has that helped or affected your playing or your writing in any way? Like I know a lot of people say that along with like losing a bunch of weight or like shifting their lifestyle into a different direction, it affects a lot of the other things, other aspects of your life, not just like your physical well-being, but a lot of things mentally. Have you experienced anything like that as far as how you approach music?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that happen when you sort of manage to come to a better place. I mean, first of all, you start to sort of tap on your shoulder and feel actually a bit proud of what you achieved,
Mm-hmm.
and that helps your confidence. And obviously, when you sort of get in better shape, you get this pretty big energy boost that is pretty cool, actually. So sometimes I mean, my mind can be all over the place. Sometimes I even wonder what the hell is happening, because I have so many ideas and a lot of energy, there. So once again, need to find that balance there, so it sort of works. But I mean, musically, the thing I know is that I enjoy being on stage. Mm-hmm. That's actually like a personal victory for me. It's fun being on stage, and I don't feel like a fucking I don't know, exhausted fucking, it's actually pretty fun being on stage and jump around, and it's a cool experience. It's a personal victory for me.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So another one of your personal interests outside of health and fitness, you mentioned, or I guess it is kind of known at this point that you were inspired to write the song "We Drift On" that we were talking about earlier, after kind of looking up at the stars through like a telescope. So I understand that you're a bit of an astronomy nerd. When did that happen? Has that always been an interest of yours?
I think it's a lifelong interest and basically a passion. And I mean, coming from being a sci-fi freak to, I mean, I've just always been fascinated by space and cosmos and all that weird thing that you don't really understand. And it's such a weird place. A lot of weird things happen there. And there was a few years ago, my lovely wife Elena bought me a telescope, actually, and nice. It was a surprise. I got home from a festival show or something, and she had actually ordered it, and it was beautiful. And I set it up, and I like watching stars, and it just fascinates me. It's because it raises so many questions. I mean, it can become a bit cheesy, but that's basically the whole We Drift On thing is like when you are in that sort of mindset and you're actually watching the fucking universe and cosmos, and you sort of start to have ideas, and what is our place in all this actually,
right.
And I mean, are we the first humans? Are we the last humans? Why can't we find any other life form? I mean, there's a lot of things that you sort of start thinking about them. And there was some thoughts and reflections I wanted to use for that song, since it also was in the more melancholic, mellow themed song. So there's not a super fine punchline in the lyrics. It's more about my thoughts and reflections.
Right. I've noticed there's kind of a similar trend among astronomers or among like astrophysicists, where because space, the universe, even just individual galaxies are so huge and so vast, and it's impossible to chart really everything.
Yeah.
Because of that being like an inherent element to that field of study, you have to kind of approach everything with like a super open mind. So, it's like, well, is this an extraterrestrial thing? I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
Things that might otherwise, be kind of like shirked off as like conspiracy theory or unfounded or whatever by a lot of other scientific fields. Astronomers really do have to like consider those possibilities and those options. Has that kind of, oh, go ahead.
No, I so agree with you. It's the sort of the endless possibilities what you can actually sort of discover and whatever. That's also because I sort of found myself that I read about stuff like this, or I watch documentaries about this like basically every day. Yeah. So it was like last year I sort of decided that I'm gonna fucking learn this for real. So I actually applied for a university course, I said, I want to fucking talk to a fucking professor and ask my questions, because the more I read, the more questions I have. Yeah. Because that's just how it is, So I did that. I applied for a course, and I'm in the middle of it now, and I think it's wonderful.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You gonna go for the long haul? You gonna try to get like a degree in astronomy and everything, or is this just kind of more of like a I want to take a class just to like get a more official understanding of things?
Yeah, right now it's basically just to do something about my curiosity and my
Right.
question.
Right.
I think it's also, it sort of struck me. I've almost wished that it should have struck me about 10 years ago, but it's pretty cool that when you're sort of adult and you have your job and family, but if you want to learn something, I mean, in Swedish, it's for free to attend university and all of that. So when you're an adult and you sort of apply for things, of course you apply for things you really care about or you want to learn,
Right.
instead of when you're younger, when you're basically forced to learn stuff that you don't really care about. But this is something I care about. So this is why it's also so interesting and I want to learn. So the first step is that I just want to figure out the cosmos a bit more.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome, man. One of the interesting things that I have in these questions here is kind of a more, controversial point, I guess, in astronomy. The distinguished Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb's just put out a book putting forth the argument that, God, I have so much trouble pronouncing this, Oumuamua, I want to
Yeah.
say, the asteroid that passed through the solar system in 2017 was more probably an extraterrestrial light sail or probe rather than just an asteroid. Uh, what do you think about that? Do you have any? Do you think the source for that theory is valid, or is it just kind of like still based super loosely in conjecture?
I think everything like that is requires an open mind,
Mm-hmm.
because where we are right now, we don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, I've seen interviews with him, so I'm familiar with him, and I know about the object because it actually came from interstellar. It came from nowhere, and it came pretty close, and there was a lot of deviations how it moved. It actually accelerated, and it behaved really weirdly.
Right.
But then again, we don't know shit. We
Yeah.
basically know what happens in our own solar system.
Right.
So it's I try to keep an open mind because if you start to think like, is there life out there? I mean, I would find it really remarkable if there weren't, because I mean, this little tiny place where we think that we have mapped out, it's such a small part of the full cosmos. I mean,
Right.
and as you mentioned earlier, the whole thing with space, how vast it is, and I mean the distances and all of that. It's so mind blowing, because I mean our closest star besides our sun, Proxima Centauri, that's about 4 light years away,
Right.
and that's nothing compared to like cosmos things. I mean, the Hubble telescope is watching stars that are like 200 million light years away. But I mean, Proxima Centauri is only 4 light years away. But where we are right now with the technology, with our rockets and stuff like that, if we would go to Proxima Centauri, it would take like 80,000 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, we are so far from being close to an opportunity to discover something that
Right.
is out there, because I think we are not really quite there yet. I mean, like in theory, if we have a telescope, we look at a star and a planet that is like 100 million light years away. The sad thing is that what we are looking at is how the planet looked 100 million years ago,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what we perceive. We look back in time. I mean,
Right.
the further we look. So, and the same time, if they would look at us from 100 million light years away, they would see dinosaurs.
Yeah.
So it's impossible for us right now to sort of communicate with interstellar life, if there would be, because we can't communicate. I mean,
Right.
Proxima Centauri, 4 light years. If we send a radio signal there, it would take 4 years to come there, and they pick it up, they answer, hey, what's up? And that was like 8 years
Yeah.
of like, what's up?
Yeah.
So it's we're so far from sort of going there, but I'm not ruling out anything when it comes to a strange object, because space is such a fucking mystery.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you bring up like the point where we're at with technology, because yeah, we are still way far away from achieving, you know, anything remotely close to being able to send a human somewhere at light speed. There have been, like you have like the Hadron Collider and you have other things like that have kind of experimented with like, particle disintegration and sending things, transmitting energy or, turning the physical into energy and sending things at a light speed signal. And it's all still like in such an infant stage that it's like so far away from anything tangible. But other areas of technology are now kind of, booming. We have a space force now in America. Uh, exactly. But not interstellar travel, but space travel in general is starting to kind of be more researched and more elaborated on by certain scientific communities. Do you think that like space tourism is going to be a thing in our lifetimes or even in the next generation?
Good question. Actually, right now, NASA is broadcasting live. They are putting a rover on Mars.
Right.
It's actually happening right now. So on YouTube, you can follow that. But I mean, for space tourism and something like that, it's I don't know. There's so many obstacles, and we are not really quite there technology wise. I mean, there's so many things to sort of so many obstacles basically. But seriously, if I would have the money, I would be the first tourist to go up to space and just feel zero gravity or whatever. I mean, it would be amazing. But that's a pretty far step from going to Mars and going into the local Mars pub and having a beer, a space beer.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty far. It's a far step. So I don't know. Of course, I hope we will get there, and maybe someday we will even colonize planets. I think we have to do it because we are basically fucked. But yeah, I think I wish I could live it. To be honest, yeah. That would be great. But well, I don't think it will happen.
Well, if
in my lifetime.
Here's to hoping that the transference of consciousness is a real thing, and
yeah,
we'll be able to get there, someday. Well, that's super cool, man. I think that it's a really neat interest to have. I've always been super fascinated by both space and like the deep sea. I think that idea of just like unexplored hugeness is super super fascinating to me. And it's funny because I know I was actually just having a conversation with some of my band members about this yesterday about how it's like there's such a fear surrounding like being out in like open water and stuff like that. But I find it like super like relaxing and like meditative. And like granted, I grew up in California where like we have a coast and there's the ocean is like right there. So I kind of conquered that fear as a young child before I like knew better. I guess I would just like swim out like way past where the tide is going and just like sit out there on like the still water and just kind of float. And I've always thought it was super cool. What's up?
You're a merman.
Yes, exactly. And I've always just thought that stuff was super cool. And then as I got older and was like, oh, we've only explored like, a drop in the bucket of the ocean. That's always been something super fascinating to me. Every time there's another like deep sea discovery, I'm just like, oh, that's so fucking cool. So
I know James Cameron did that. I'm sure you saw that.
Yeah.
He did that documentary when we went really deep, and I agree. I mean, it's super interesting, and I think it's pretty common that things that are so unknown, that's super interesting. It can be, I mean, deep sea or space, or it can be spiritual things or whatever. I mean, since it's so unknown, and you probably won't in your lifetime ever know the answer to your questions. That's what is so fascinating as well. Yeah. So,
well, shifting gears, bringing things back down to earth, so to speak. Yeah. So you've mentioned you have a family, you took a break, a breakup that ended up being a break from music, to focus on stuff like that. You've posted guitar videos of you playing with your son. That's super cool, man. That must be a really cool thing to kind of see him like following in your footsteps as far as that stuff goes. Does he have his own band right now?
Yeah, it does, and that is amazing because he managed to find sort of equals, or what do you call it, like people that actually listen to the same kind of like old thrash music and stuff like that. Then and I think when he started playing in a band, he was probably like 14, maybe, very very young. He's turning 16 in April this year. But so they have a band and they're so super creative and they all love the same things, and they actually last year released their debut album.
Nice.
So an American label called Redefining Darkness, and the band is called Sarcator. It's like a blend of Sarcophago and Creator. So
Oh,
those
right.
put it together, and so it's Sarcator, and they released an album, and it turned out fucking good. I mean, they play like fucking adults. It's really impressive, and they asked me to produce their album, and I did it, and it was amazing. And yeah, talented guys, and still so young.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting to follow them.
Hey man, that's a lot more than most other 16-year-olds can say is like, oh, we released an album. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
Cool.
super cool. So hopefully it's the first big step on a long and successful musical journey. That's awesome to hear, man. Well, I've kept you here for almost an hour. I don't want to take up your whole day, but dude, thank you so much, man, for joining us. For those of you watching, if you're just tuning in, this is Marko of The Crown. They are releasing their next album, Royal Destroyer, on March 12th. You can pre-order that over at metalblade.com/The Crown. Make sure to follow them down below on all their social media links. And until next time, everybody, I'm your host, Riley McShane, singer for Allegion, joined today by Marko, guitar player for The Crown. Thanks again so much, man. It was awesome talking to you.
Yeah, it was a nice chat, man. Thank you very
Hell
much.
yeah.